Hello and welcome to this episode of T-Tech. This is part 2 of 3 in our OpenBSD CARP series, and in this part we're going to configure CARP and PFSYNC on OpenBSD. I do hope you enjoy this one, and let's get into it. Hello and welcome to this episode of T-Tech. This is part 2 of 3 in our OpenBSD CARP series, and in this part we're going to set up CARP and PFSYNC on R1 and R2. How we spoke about in our introduction. So we're going to start on R1. We're going to log in as root. And the first thing I want to do is run ifconfig. Now, our EM0 interface is our LAN from our diagram. EM1 is that PFSync interface that was between the firewalls for the state updates. And EM2 is our WAN. So every interface in OpenBSD has to be configured in a file that's in etc /etc hostname dot and then whatever the interface name is. So in our case it's EM0. So enter, and we're going to hit I for insert, and we're going to type init space 192.168.1.2. We're going to use a /24 mask. Hit escape and hold the shift key down and hit Z twice. Okay, that's our LAN. Now we're going to go into the PFSync interface, the EM1, and we're going to type init 10.0.0.1, and we're going to use a /30 mask since there's only 2 hosts on that segment. Escape and same deal to save it. And now we'll go into our WAN interface, EM2, init 192.168.2.2 with a /24 mask. And because we're using static IP addresses on our WAN connection, we have to set a default static route. So we're going to say !route add default space 192.168.2.254. Now, before we go any further, this is a great time to explain, so there's no confusion with this series. What I'm discussing and configuring here is only the CARP and PFSync portions of our network redundancy. So just our physical boxes being able to fail over to one another. Now, another part of network redundancy is something called WAN failover, so our internet connection having more than one internet connection to switch over to if one or the other goes down. Now, if we were to do that in this case, we would need 2 ISPs, and we would either need to use a default static route to ISP1 over here, and then do another static route to ISP2. Now we could do more advanced configurations like BGP, where we would then have to peer with each ISP. Now that's out of the scope of what we're configuring here, but just so there's absolutely no confusion about this. So again, with that out of the way, we will save this. And now that we've configured the physical interfaces, we have to go in and create the CARP and PFSync interfaces. Now, a quick thing to note, if we run ifconfig right now, we won't see any CARP or PFSync interfaces because they're logical. So, in other words, they're software based. They don't exist. But that's how we know we need to create them to make them work. So we're going to say vi, and then hostname etc hostname dot, and then carp 10. Now this is our LAN side carp, and you'll notice the number, it doesn't have to match the group for your carp, but it makes a lot of sense to have that match. It really helps with administrative tasks and things of that nature. So from here we're going to type the normal IP command as before. So 192.168.1.1, a /24 mask with that broadcast ID for the network. 1.1.255. And after that, the things after this are CARP specific. So the first thing we're going to type is the VHID, a space after that, and then a number. Now ours is 10, and this is our LAN CARP again. After that, we want to type pass for password, and we're going to say CARP pass. This is the password to protect this CARP instance. So you can't have a rogue CARP speaker come in and try to redirect traffic in a malicious way or anything like that, because they wouldn't know the password. So this host wouldn't accept CARP packets from a host that doesn't have the password. After that, we want to link it with the physical interface. How we said this is software. So we need CARP dev space EM0. Since this is our LAN CARP, do make sure to link that with the right interface, otherwise you'll be scratching your head why it's not working. Believe me, I've done that before. So we're going to escape. And before we move on, because once we get to the second firewall, I'm going to move a little bit faster. So just to clear all this up, the 192.168.1.1, that is our VIP, okay? And everything else, the net mask, the broadcast, the VHID 10, that's our CARP group, okay? They have to be in the same group to make this work. The password is for the authentication. We're not going to accept packets from any other speakers that don't know the password. So that does have to match on both. And the CARP dev links it to the physical interface, this CARP instance. So with all that out of the way, we're going to shift and tap Z twice to save it again. And now we're going to do the same thing for our CARP WAN. So that was 192.168.2.1, /24 mask. And that broadcast address, the group number of 20, that password. Now we're going to use CARP Pass 2. It has to be slightly different. It's a good best practice for security. And after this, we're going to use CARP dev. And now this one is the physical interface of EM2. So again, as we just spoke, all those things are the same. So we'll save that. And finally, we'll set up our PFSYNC interface for those updates to be exchanged for the state information between the two firewalls. So for that, under etc, we're going to say hostname.pfsync0. And the first thing we want to type is up to bring the interface up on boot. And then sync dev space. And again, the PFSYNC is a logical interface. It doesn't exist. It's software. So we want to do EM1. We want to link that to the right interface. Now again, save the file the same way. And at this point, we should be able to bring up the interfaces. So for that, we're going to say etc net start. You could also reboot at this point as well, if you would like. So this should bring them up. And let's run an ifconfig. The CARP interfaces are up, and they have the right CARP dev and everything, and the VHID is correct. So that is as expected. So we're all good, and as you see now, they've turned to master because we haven't configured the other one yet. But that is the interface portion. So because these are firewalls, we also have to configure the packet filter, so the PF. Now, the PF file is in etcpf.conf, but before we make our changes, let's back up the original one with CP. I want to back that up to pfconf.back. Remove the original, buy a new one. Make sure you make the pf.conf file. So the first thing I want to put here are some macros. And macros make it easy to refer to a certain type of information. It can be a port number, an IP address, or an interface, anything like that. We're going to say LAN equals, and then in quotes, we're going to put EM0, the physical interface for our LAN. And then we're going to type WAN equals EM2, and also CARP WAN equals CARP 20. All right. Under this, we're going to set runtime options. The first thing I want to set is set skip on LO 0. This tells PF not to filter packets on the loopback interface. So after that, we're going to say set block policy drop. That tells PF to not send replies to senders when senders send. If a packet matches a block rule, the OpenBSD will not send a reply back to them, so it will just remain silent. And that's a good security practice to get into it. It does help security of the system. Now, the first filter rule we want to use is block drop all. This blocks all our traffic, regardless of the source IP, the destination IP, the protocol it's using, the port number, or the interface. So everything will be dropped unless, since in PF, the packet gets evaluated by each rule in our list from top to bottom. The action that is the last action that matches, either block or pass, is going to be executed on the packet. So if we don't add anything else, everything will be dropped. But under this, we want to put pass proto carp keep state, and under that pass proto PFSYNC keep state, because we want to pass our control traffic obviously first. And now we need to let LAN traffic in, so we're going to say pass in on. We're going to say a $ to tell PF we want to use our macros. And we're going to say a LAN interface. From the source, we're going to say $LAN : network. The $LAN : network is a shorthand way to refer to the network that is assigned to the interface of EM0 in our case. So the LAN interface that's assigned there when we load our rules. So it makes it really easy if we change any of those parameters, because we won't have to rewrite this file. So these packets can be going to any destination, and we just want to keep state on them. And after they get into the LAN side of the firewall, we want to pass them out onto our WAN. And they're still coming from the LAN network at this point. They can be going to any destination. But at this point, we do want to change the source address to seem to be coming from our one public address on our WAN. In this case, it does have to be the CARP, though, interface. So we're going to say NAT-2. In parentheses, we're going to say $CARP WAN. Now, after that, we're going to say keep state. The parentheses help us if the address ever changes on that interface. We won't have to reload our rules. It will just keep translating traffic to that IP address. But the idea with the NAT2, it's making all the private addresses on our LAN network appear to be coming from the one public address on our WAN. And since we're utilizing CARP, if the WAN goes down and we don't have the packets being NATed to the virtual IP, the failover will not switch over to the other side, the backup on the way back through. So that is important to have that there, though, and natting that to the CARP WAN. But under that, the last thing we'll do is let the firewall itself talk. So pass it on WAN from our WAN network to any destination and keep state. And there's all our PF conf rules we need for this. So we're going to save this and run PFCTL -nf etc pfconf. That verifies it for us. There's no output, so that does mean our syntax is good. After that, we're going to load it with pfctl-f etc pfconf. Then we'll view the rules with pfctl-sr. Now, it does appear that all our rules loaded great, and we have our networks resolved correctly. So that's great. That's just what we want to see. So at this point, the last two things that are left to configure are IP routing and the CARP preemption. So again, the IP routing is just so it can, since these are routers, it can take a packet in and route it out between the networks that it's connected to. So we're going to vi etc sysctl.conf. First thing we'll put is net.init.ip.forwarding equals 1. And for the CARP preemption, net init CARP preempt equals 1. And we'll save this file just like before. And if we don't want to reboot our system, we can just do sysctl net init IP forwarding equals 1. And we're going to say sysctl net init CARP preempt equals 1. And those are all the main things we have to do to set this up on R1. So that set up our interfaces, our pfconf file, our CARP and PFSYNC interfaces, as well our IP routing and our CARP preemption. So we also now need to move over to R2, and that's where I've already explained myself for how this is going to work and everything. So we're going to do R2 a little bit quicker, but so let's go on over to R2. All right, so we're on R2 at this point. We'll log in as root. And the process is pretty much the same. We're going to run ifconfig first and understand that EM0 is our LAN, EM1 is our PFSync interface, EM2 is our WAN. Again, those are configured in the etc hostname file, so we're going to start with EM0. Put init 192.168.1.3 the /24 mask and save it. And now move on to EM1. And again, that will be the 10.0.0.2 with a /30 mask and save that. And now we'll go to our WAN, our EM2. And that is 192.168.2.3 with a /24 mask. And since this is the WAN, we do have to put a default static route. So !route add default 192.168.2.254. And we'll save that. And now we want to go into the CARP configuration. So vi etc hostname.carp10 init, and then we'll put the virtual IP, the 24 mask, and we'll put in our broadcast ID, our VHID of 10, the password of CARP pass. Remember, they have to match. So after that, the CARP dev, and actually because this is the R2 and we do want this one to be the backup, we also have to edit the advertised SKU. So we have to do adv SKU space 100 because the higher one is less preferred, so that will cause R2 to become the backup. So after that, CARP dev EM0, and now we'll save that, and now do the same thing with the WAN CARP. So CARP 20 was 2.1 /24 mask, our broadcast address, our VHID of 20, our password of CARP pass2, advertised SKU of 100, and CARP dev of EM2. So that's our CARP interfaces taken care of. And lastly, we'll configure the PFSYNC interface for the updates of the state table. So we're going to say up and sync dev EM1, save that, and now again we could reboot at this point, but we're just going to do etc net start and an ifconfig to check everything. Everything does look good. Alright, And now we need to configure the pfconf file, so we're going to back up the original one to pfconf.back, remove the original, make a new version, and we're going to utilize the macros again at the same way. And our CARP WAN for the same reason, CARP 20. Those runtime options, once again, set skip on LO0 and set block policy drop. We want to block everything to begin with. Then we want to pass some CARP traffic. And we want to pass PFSYNC traffic. Now pass our LAN in with our $LAN from our typos. Okay. Our LAN network to any keep state, and we want to route that out of our WAN from our excuse me, our LAN network to any. We want to change the source with nat-su to our CARP WAN, so that VIP on our WAN, and keep state. And the last thing we need to do is put a rule to allow the firewall to talk. So pass out from the WAN network to any destination, keep state. Now with that, we're going to go ahead and save the file. We'll verify it with pfctl-nf etc pfconf, and there's no output, so there's no errors in it. And then we'll do pfctl-f etc pf.conf to load those. And now we'll do pfctl-sr to verify they're loaded. And they are, and all of our networks are resolved and everything. So at this point, the last thing left to do is enable the IP routing and the CARP preemption. And again, we do that in etc sysctl.conf, and we want to say net init IP forwarding equals 1. And for the CARP preemption, we want to say net init CARP preempt equals 1. And again, if we don't want to reboot, we'll just do sysctl net init IP forwarding equals 1 and net init CARP preempt equals 1. All right. Now, those are all the steps to enable this on R2. And as you can see, because the advertised SKU is 100, he is still in the backup state, again, with the CARP interfaces. Because he's hearing R1's CARP packets that have a lower advertised SKU, so that means he's going to become the backup. So, this was part 2 of 3 in our OpenBSD CARP series. In this part, we set up the configurations for CARP and PFSYNC on our OpenBSD machines. Now, in part 3, we're going to go through and get a client set up, and we'll verify that this works and how to do a few more verification commands just to make sure everything is buttoned up nice and well. So I do hope you enjoyed this one. I will see you in part 3. And I'm Tyler with T-Tech, and have a nice day.